What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So I have for you today the 3,000 subscriber Q&A video. Thanks to all of you for subscribing. Thanks for leaving comments. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. The channel continues to grow. Nowhere to go but up. So today I'm going to try to get to all the questions. I think like last time, there's few enough of them that I should be able to get to everyone. It will be a long video, but I reckon we'll get through everything. If you left several questions, which some of you did, you're going to get the speed run answers. People who left like one question are going to get a little more fleshed out answers, but that's just the way it goes. This is going to be a little more casual formatted. I've got my laptop here so I can read everything and get through it all, but let's go through it. Let's see here. DVD9P asks, is it legal under UFC rules to grab Steven Asplin's loose skin in a grappling exchange? So I don't think so. I'd have to double check the wording, but I know there are rules against like pinching and scratching, which they'd probably lump that into. But that is an actual like martial arts tactic. If you do more like if you look at more of like the self-defense-y side of jiu-jitsu and judo and Japanese jiu-jitsu and stuff, there is like grabbing and sort of like rolling up and crushing / pinching the flesh. And that can be like pretty fucking painful. Now, like me, I've had that done to me like so many times at this point that I'm like kind of immune to it. Like to prove the point, because I was showing it to someone and doing it like lightly while grappling, and they were complaining that I was doing that because it hurt. And I was like, you just need to like get used to that, because it shouldn't, like that shouldn't make you tap out or anything. And to prove the point, I had my buddy Aaron come over, and he's really strong, really strong grip, and we both grabbed each other's like sides, and it was a contest. We were both going to squeeze as hard as we could and see who would give up first. And neither of us gave up. Our hands just eventually got tired and we agreed to stop. But afterwards, we both had these just like gnarly purple like bear paw prints on our sides. And yeah, like that is a thing. It is painful, but you can also build a tolerance. Grabbing someone's shorts would be realistically like better for an actual grip. For like a gi style grip. So, which is also illegal. So just grab the shorts, I would say. Moving on. Cool You Scone 2260 asks, oh, not a question, but I just appreciate the content. Well, thank you very much. One of my main men, Key Ion Arc Knights asks, let's see, he says, congrats, thank you. Do I have any thoughts on Masaki Niori? I don't really. I also have heard Jack Slack talk about him. And at first I thought he was the guy who, like when I read the question, at first I thought it was the guy who was popularizing kicking the back leg with like the ball of the foot front kick. So if you imagine it, we're in like a close stance matchup. I kick with my back leg at your back leg, and I do like a snapping ball of the foot front kick to your thigh. That's a thing you see in like Kyokushin karate, and this one Japanese kickboxer has been doing that a lot, helping popularize it. So at first I was thinking of him, but I think that's Yuki Oza, isn't it? So to answer the question, no, I'm not really familiar with him as much as I should be. I haven't been, really since like heavyweight K1 fell apart, I haven't really been like too in the loop with the kickboxing scene, and that was years ago now. But yeah, he goes on to say that this guy's really exciting, and he says he scratches that technical itch that Peter Yan does, but he gets more finishes. So yeah, go check him out, I guess, if you're into kickboxing and fun striking. Let's see. Love Guap just has another congratulatory comment. Thank you very much. Let's see. Shredrick asks if I can do a show and tell with some of your blades and swords. I mean, maybe if I eventually do run out, which is still going to take a while, I'll do that, but I'll actually just do a video about it and be like, here's what this one was, here's what this one was. Maybe I'll do that, but no promises. I'll at least talk about this one. This is a gnarly little homemade art piece a little bit. Hopefully you can see some of the design on it. This whole thing is one piece of metal. It's a nice hefty little blade, and that's pretty fun. So I dig it. Moving on. Let's see. Charlie Paul 4422 asks, could you do a Brock versus Fedor breakdown? Yeah, that's like an option for a future technical deep dive, because if you didn't see it, uh, yesterday I dropped my Ilya versus Connor technical deep dive, and that's the first one I've done where it's a hypothetical matchup, not being done in anticipation of an upcoming fight. So, and I asked people to recommend fights they want to see, and they've been saying all sorts of stuff like Stipe versus Fedor, uh, Armin versus Khabib, Islam versus Khabib, GSP versus Islam, like Conor McGregor versus the other featherweights, like they didn't fight, like Volkanovski, stuff like that. So yeah, something like Fedor versus Brock could happen eventually. Let's see. MMA Enjoyer 2000 asks, how do you rate Anthony Showtime Pettis, and where do you rank him in the lightweight GOAT list and lightweight peak for peak boat list? Okay, let me whip up Pettis's Wikipedia page real quick, because I have thought about this in the past, and Pettis is underrated. He's underappreciated. He fought a lot of great fighters, and he beat a lot of great fighters, and he was the champ both in WEC and in the UFC. I think he defended both. Maybe he didn't get a chance to defend the WEC one. Yeah, he just won it. But like, I'm just going to list off some names of people this guy beat. Okay. So as an old guy, he was beating Alex Morono. He won a trilogy fight with Cerrone. He knocked out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at welterweight. He submitted Michael Chiesa. So just those two wins back to back. They were split by a loss to Ferguson, but you know they're his two. They're back to back in terms of his two wins, and to have submitted Chiesa, like a jiu-jitsu guy like Chiesa, who's also bigger than you, and to knock out a striker like Stephen Thompson, who again is also bigger than you, pretty fucking good. So you got that. It's even better than like Jorge Masvidal submitting Chiesa and knocking out Darren Till. You know what I mean? So you got that. He beat Jim Miller. He beat Charles Oliveira down at featherweight. He submitted him. Yeah, so and I know Oliveira dived into a few guillotines. I get that, but like if you're submitting Oliveira and submitting Michael Chiesa, both of whom, yes, are jiu-jitsu guys who can be submitted themselves. Nevertheless, if you're doing that, you're pretty legit, right? He did that. He submitted Gilbert Melendez. He submitted Benson Henderson. He finished with a body kick Donald Cerrone. He head kick KO Joe Lazan. He beat Jeremy Stevens. He beat Benson Henderson. That's the one where he got the Showtime kick. Got Shane Roller, Danny Castillo. Like, this is an insane resume. Yes, there's plenty of losses mixed in there. And he lost to plenty of great guys too, right? Like he lost to Dos Anjos. He lost to Alvarez. He lost to Holloway. But, this is an incredible resume. He is overlooked. If you're just looking at like, if you're doing what people often do now, and just like listing like how many good wins they got, and not caring about necessarily win streak or title fight, this is a very strong resume. Yes, there would be plenty of losses too, and yes, that's why he's not up there with like Khabib or Islam or something. But yeah, he's an overlooked guy. That whole era is overlooked. Like Benson Henderson is incredibly overlooked. Rafael Dos Anjos is incredibly overlooked. There were some great fighters at lightweight back then. And this is a really good diversity of opponents he had to face too. He's got strikers, he's got jiu-jitsu guys, he's got wrestlers. Like, if you know me, I care about that. So yeah, Pettis was great. He was on the Wheaties box for a reason, okay? What's your favorite martial art to train, watch, and use in MMA? Submission grappling. And that was asked by Kronos the Breaker. All right. RKO out of nowhere asks, you talk about having a streamlined game. What are some of your personal top tier techniques? Meaning like what's my game kind of? Mount. I really like the mount position. I put work into drilling the mount position and maintaining the mount position. And from the mount position, like I like to set up the head and arm choke, the arm triangle, the katagatame, or the collar choke, the cross collar choke if it's gi. But realistically, like, if it's a fight, I can just like ground and pound from there. So it just doesn't matter. So mount. Let's see. Small Child Punter asks, how tall are you and what animes have you watched? What's your preferred genre? How come there isn't a whole lot of anime talk on the second channel? That's a good question. I've been meaning to talk more about anime on that channel. How tall am I? I'm sort of like a 6'1" tweener. Favorite animes of all time, I like Yu Yu Hakusho. I like Hellsing. I like Dragon Ball Z. I like My Hero Academia. I like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I like some sneaky kind of deep cuts like Baccano. I like a lot of old anime. I do prefer the 80s and 90s anime art style. I've been sort of revisiting a lot of that lately. A lot of that shit's on like Amazon Prime now, which is nice. Like I've been watching the Moby Dick, for example. Record of the Lotus War, stuff like that. So as far as covering it more on the channel, that's something I've kind of been meaning to do, but as it's played out, it's been disproportionately focused on like video games and like Western comics and comic movies. But yeah, maybe I'll talk more about that stuff going forward. Let's see. Where I kind of lost my track here. Let's see. Yari asked a question that I covered, but we'll do you here again. DVD9P. It says, so you have officially run out of swords. That is a different sword I'm holding in this video, Porkchop. This is a different katana. I don't think you know your swords, my friend. All right, moving on. Padalo Quendo 0 asks, one of my regulars, says, also congratulations for the 3K, dude. Okay, no question here, just a congratulatory comment. Thank you very much, my man. Let's see. Plinking since 06 asks, how do you try to determine the level a fighter is at? Fans seem to struggle looking at a fighter and gauging their skill level and nuances. Maybe explains the flippant shifts in narrative they go through. So I've talked about this in videos. I'm going to set my knife down and pick up my coffee here. Hold on one second. I've talked about this in other videos, how it is difficult because if two people are like, or if we have four people, if we have two pairs of people, two pairs of opponents, and they're each competent, they're each well-schooled, they're each like not making very like blatant categorical mistakes that just scream amateur at you. But the first pairing is like a regional level quality of athletes, and the second pairing is like an international level, a world champion quality of athletes. If you watch those two fights, they might not look very different, right? If they're evenly matched and they all like don't suck, the fights themselves might not look very different in appearance, and it might actually not be obvious just watching them in a vacuum that the second fight involves like much better fighters and athletes. That might not be clear. What would make that clear is if you swapped opponents, right? As if the two elite guys fought the two regional guys. Like that would reveal the gap. And what's interesting about that is that there's still like a required skill floor for you to be able to kind of show off in that way. Okay, so like what I mean by that is if you take two elite guys and make them fight each other and they're kind of evenly matched, they're gonna do their kind of bread and butter stuff. As I've talked about this as well with like, okay, why do guys like Islam and Mighty Mouse and John Jones and guys like that seem so well-rounded? Is it because that's the answer, or is it because they're just not being pressed by their opponents? In any case, if you if you took someone like Islam and made him fight someone like me, right? Like he would be able to open up his toolkit as much as he wanted, right? It would be so on the table for him to do whatever. And yeah, like if you have that kind of skill gap, you can get flashy. You can be like, I'm going to do the ollie shuffle. I'm going to drop my hands. I'm going to do all the showboating. I'm going to do spinning stuff. Like you can do all that and just like make a fool out of your outmatched opponent. But that only works if your outmatched opponent has some amount of training. If your outmatched opponent is like a total novice and is just doing everything wrong and like chaotically, you actually can't always like style on them as dramatically, because it's as if they don't speak the language. Like, you're going to be doing stuff to them and they're just not going to react in the predictable way that a trained person who's much worse than you might. So ironically, if you fight someone who's like really shitty, you kind of have to just do basic stuff to them. And I kind of actually think that's what happened when Floyd fought Conor. Because Conor did some stuff and kind of got Floyd to just march him down and like start boxing him up, and which isn't typically what Floyd does. But I don't think that was like illustrative of Floyd being like, oh my God, I just can't work my normal game. This guy's so good. I think it was more, okay, my normal game is actually designed to beat way better boxers than this. And the way to beat this guy is something simpler and kind of less amusing, less colorful, less advanced. But because he's not at that level, that's what I'm going to do. So that all gets weird. There is a thing where you can kind of see mastery. So I think it was, I can't remember the name of the instructor. There's a guy with a Shotokan karate channel that's really exceptional. He's a really good karateka. And he talked about this, how like you can just tell when something is of high quality, even if you're not like super well versed in the subject. So you can watch a master of a martial art that you don't practice and that you don't know much about, but you can kind of tell they're a master just by the way they move and do it. There's just subtleties about how relaxed they are, how controlled they are, how they can be fluid and then suddenly, do something emphatically with force, like stuff like that. You can just tell they're so comfortable like doing it. Stuff like that is subtle, and you kind of just need a trained eye to even notice, but that's very real. So like if you watch like Rickson Gracie grapple with people, he's doing pretty basic jujitsu, and he's doing jujitsu that any like good blue belt or purple belt can do. But so in that sense, it's like, well, how can I tell Rickson's better than like some random purple belt? And it's the subtle things. There's just little ways in which he's doing it that are hard to even identify or quantify. But again, if you have sort of a trained eye, you can kind of tell is happening. So it's hard. This is very much an art rather than a science, and certainly not an exact science. So yeah, it does make it difficult. And I've talked about how old fighters had flaws and they did things like kind of obviously wrong in some cases, but they also did a lot of things right. And new fighters also do a lot of things obviously wrong. So it is genuinely hard to compare eras of fighters beyond the things you can quantify, right? Beyond just saying like, well, but the fighters just are more active now. They land more strikes, per fight than they used to. Fighters are in a bigger competition pool now than they used to be. Like that stuff you can identify and say, yes, that's definitely happening. But past that, it gets really hard to actually say like, this guy is definitely better than this guy, even though we didn't see them fight any of the same people or each other. That is hard to do. All right, moving on. Let's see. RK out of nowhere asks another question here. If you could fight anybody living or dead, who would it be and why? Well, I don't want to fight anymore. Now, is this meaning like because it'd be cool or because I want to like beat the fuck out of them? I am tempted to just say Edward Norton's answer from Fight Club and say Gandhi, but that's sort of a joke response. Because it's like I could fight Hitler and just beat the fuck out of him. Like that'd be cool. Or are you asking more like, which fighter would it be cool to share the cage with? And let's assume like I'm not going to get injured or get CTE from it or something. If that's the spirit of the question, I'd want to fight Fedor like 100%. Fedor is one of the GOATs to me. He's my favorite fighter. He and I are actually comparable sizes, so that wouldn't be like a mismatch in that way. And style-wise, he's a guy I feel like I am influenced by. So I would want to fight him. It'd be like Stephen Thompson wanting to fight like Bill Wallace or something. So I'll go with that. Let's see. Logan2619 says, what do you think about the idea of more stand-ups / separations and even taking a point away when there's excessive stalling and grappling positions? Okay. I'm definitely not Joe Rogan on this topic. I'm definitely not like, yeah, they should just never stand it up no matter what. And the fight should be have no time limit and happen in a basketball court. Most of that is stupid. The basketball court idea is especially stupid. If there's nothing containing the action, like Jack Slack has talked about this, but like if there's nothing containing the action, there's nothing stopping these guys from just running away from each other. And if you're not gonna, and if in addition to that you have this purist like let the fight happen attitude, and you're not gonna, the ref isn't gonna intervene if they're like running away from each other, then yeah, like the fight's just gonna be like a marathon. It's gonna be like a tennis match with about as much contact. So that would be stupid. But as far as stand-ups, like and penalizing, I mean, before, you know, as much as I'm like don't give a shit about cheating hardly at all, if we're gonna like take points from people stalling, we should, before we do that, be much more aggressive about taking points for like eye pokes and kicking people in the nuts and shit and hitting them in the back of the head. Like if we're gonna be so forgiving with those fouls, but then like suddenly take a point for like holding someone in half guard, like that seems backwards to me. But as far as more aggressive stand-ups, like I'm not sure that we like need it, because A, we still get them sometimes anyways, and B, like it puts me to mind to like Che's point about rounds, MMA Che. Like he, if you didn't see it, he's talked about this before, but he revisited it when he hopped on Farasa Hobby's like stream and debated him about Arman versus Charles. But they talked about whether or not fights should reset in between rounds, meaning like if the round ends and I'm on your back, should we start the next round with me on your back, or should we start standing as we currently do? And Che argued that he actually likes the reset because it removes some of the flukishness. It's almost like you get 5 small fights out of it, because if you think of it, like maybe you get a surprising takedown on me in round 1, or I slip, or you kind of clip me and it was a kind of lucky shot, and somehow by virtue of clipping me you get me to the ground, but in any way, shape, or form, like you kind of luck your way into getting on my back. And yeah, if you've got like a good body triangle, like I might be stuck there for like as long as you want me stuck there. And if we never change that position, yeah, it might just be 25 minutes of like Sterling versus Jan 2 round 3 or something. And Che's point is that by like resetting it each time, you have to kind of prove that you can actually like consistently get me to that position, and that wasn't kind of just good fortune on your part. And I see what he's saying there, and I think there's some good sense there. There's a bit of a, because isn't that, I'm not a big like stick and ball like sports guy, but isn't that how the World Series works? Don't they play multiple games and it's like a best of kind of thing? And yeah, like that does more emphatically show which team is better. And likewise, yeah, if you kind of treat the rounds as like resets, there's a sense in which it's like it's more clear that the right guy won, I guess. But yeah, the flip side to that is, you know, grappling simply does take time, and 5 minutes is not a lot of time to close the distance safely, get the person down, get to an actual dominant position, you know, meaning passing the guard and getting to one of the pinning positions, and then having time to work, having time to set up the submissions. That's just not a lot of time. And if you're forced to like redo that each time, yeah, that does favor the striker. So all this to say, as far as your question, like, we already get the stand-ups with the rounds, right? Like Islam Makhachev was on Volkanovski's back and then had to start on the feet in the next round. Like, so that's just already a part of the sport. And yeah, we still get stand-ups. We don't get a shitload of them, but we do get them. So I don't know that there's a problem. Like, I know it's boring. I know it's boring to watch the kind of lay and pray and control-based, like, never get submissions and hardly throw ground and pound wrestlers have success in the sport. I get that that's boring, but I don't know. I don't know that we need to fix anything. beyond just having other fighters get better at dealing with that. So, I don't know. Okay, RK out of nowhere with the sneaking a bunch of questions in by leaving several comments rather than leaving them all as one comment. I see what you're doing here. All right. He asks, have you done many grappling comps? Yes. Not in a while, but yes. Nothing of crazy note. I was not like a national champ or anything. Let's see. He asks as well, could Jonah Hill beat up the majority of men? How many Jonah Hills could you take in a fight? Is Jonah Hill, like, does he do martial arts, or is he just a random celebrity you're throwing out as a joke? If he does martial arts, then maybe he could beat up your average guy. Because you really don't need a lot. Like, if you've been doing, like, jiu-jitsu for, like, 6 months, you've got a pretty huge advantage over normal people. Doesn't guarantee success, especially if you don't know how to take someone down. But, yeah, it doesn't take much, because the average person can't fight, to be blunt. The average person... There's a profound disparity between the average guy's confidence in his ability to fight and his actual ability. And, you know, it's analogous to the bedroom. So, how many Jonah Hills could I take in a fight? Like, consecutively, I assume many. At once, at most 2. Well, maybe, I mean, because fighting multiple people is very hard. And I've done sparring and training where it's been 2-on-1 or done like the ballroom brawl thing where it's like the whole room is sparring each other. And you have to go really light when you do that. You have to purposely not like sucker punch people really hard. But I've done that before, and it's very interesting, and you have to change your tactics up quite a bit. And there's a whole thing about the positioning and kind of stacking them so that one person's in the other guy's way, and you can even physically grab the guy and like if you could get like double collar ties on a dude and steer him in between you and the other guy and just knee the fuck out of him and keep steering him between you and the other guy until, I don't know, you drop him with a body shot or something, or a knee to the face, and then fight the next guy. Like there's ways to deal with multiple opponents, but even there, 2 people, even if they suck, is hard to deal with. You might do it, like having Chris Pans can do that. Like if you just immediately pop, like 1-2 the first guy and knock him out, and now it's just another guy. That might be doable. And if it's 3 guys, and if you can knock out one of them really quick and then somehow deal with the other 2, like, okay. But very, very, very quickly, if we kept upping those numbers, like, oh, how about 4 people? How about 5 people? How about 6 people? No, like no one is beating them. Like, untrained, average-sized goons would beat Brock Lesnar if we had, like, half a dozen of them, more likely than not. You know, maybe not. You know, there's all sorts of conditions, right? Like, if Brock just, like, is huge and knocks out one of them, it might scare the other 5 or something like that. But, like, you know, kind of like in Jack Reacher. But, like, if they're actually trying to get a hold of him, like, it's just really hard to fight several people. Movies are not real. So there's that. Let's see. Airy and 8035 asks, thoughts on Makhachev's glove grabbing, both attempted and successful, across his title fights? My reference is the MMA Guru video on it before the JDM fight. I realize he's a biased source, but I saw merit in the examples he showed. Yeah, I also saw that video. I haven't seen it since he made it, but yeah, I mean, this is a thing Arman does, and Arman's done it throughout his career. Like Islam has done, and he did it to Arman. Like, he hits a throw on Arman because he reaches across and grabs the other guy's glove, which, if you do judo, you know, like, that's how you throw people. Is you've got whatever grip you're doing, whether it's like the collar, whether it's behind the collar, whether it's a lat grip, like whatever, you know, whether it's an overhook, underhook, whatever, but you're always pulling the other arm. There's like a hikite pulling hand action happening, and you're typically grabbing the like seam of the gi more at the tricep, more at that arm drag position, but you can also do it with grips on the sleeve, more at the wrist. And he's basically doing that. He's basically going across, hooking the glove, and using that to pull them like this to facilitate throws. And it is cheating. Islam is also pop for gear, which no one wants to talk about, but and I don't care about because I'm not an anti-gear guy. But if we're gonna be consistent, hold on one second. Anyways, yeah, he does that. It is cheating. I don't care that much because everyone cheats. Like every goat cheats. Okay, like Fedor would grab the ropes to stop from being taken down. GSP like literally grabbed Michael Bisping's shorts so hard that he tore his jockstrap, and they had to like fix it like during the fight. Anderson Silva like grabbed Chael's shorts to like stop the takedown and kind of post and frame in the rematch. John Jones is like the worst cheat in history, etc. Like cheating. There is just truth to the idea that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I've heard this for other sports too. Like I've heard stats that I can't quote you off memory, but like stats about how many uncalled fouls occur in the average like NFL game, and it's plenty. And that's just how sports work. Okay, so I'm not, as much as people think I'm like an Islam hater because I talk about the fact that he's like bigger than dudes and has a weird resume where he never fought top contenders. More on that with Arman Tsarukyan now that he's fighting Mauricio Huffy in a video I'll probably be making today. But yeah, I don't care that much that Islam grabs gloves. You know, like if you want to make it an asterisk against him, sure, you know, go ahead. And if you want to say he does that a little bit more than other people do certain things, but a little bit less than some, meaning like, yeah, he probably does that more than like I don't know, I've seen Mighty Mouse cheat as much as that, for example. But is he cheating as much as like John Jones? No. So yeah, whatever. Let's see. Moving on. The Truth This Right 6750 asks, what makes a man decide to start MMA? You know, being into martial arts and wanting to fight and just enjoying fighting. You know, some people just like getting hit. They like hitting people. You know, some people just want to prove they're the top guy. You know, everyone wants that to some degree. Some just want it more than others. You know, it's like everyone has an ego. Everyone like wants to be tough. No one wants to be a pushover. You know, no one wants to be the victim in some like a male fantasy nightmare where like you and your girlfriend are out and some guy like grabs her ass and you can't do anything about it. Like no one wants to be in that situation. So I would say it's like Achilles' line from Troy where he tells what's her name, I can't remember, his love interest who Agamemnon takes. It's like when he's talking to her and he says, I want what all men want, I just want it more. I think that's what makes you start an MMA career. Moving on. WACYM Big Games 1437 asks, what would you advise for 26-year-old upcoming MMA fighter with kickboxing base and decent grappling? I mean, there's too few details here. I mean, does decent grappling mean decent jiu-jitsu? Does it mean decent wrestling? Does it mean decent takedown defense? Good get-ups? You know, it's hard to say because those kind of funnel you into different archetypes. I also don't know how long you've been training. I don't know how new all this is to you. So, meaning, you know, if you are a kickboxer and you've been doing MMA for like a year, all of those skills are going to keep developing. You're not where your style overall hasn't been ironed out yet because you're still learning the ropes. But if you're pretty far into your training and that just is your archetype, then there's questions about like how to maximize that. But I mean, I would say if you're actually a fighter and you're like trying to make a career out of it, you know, I don't know, I would say above anything, it's like, are you training at the best gym you can train at? Like, are you listening to your coaches? Are you training intelligently? How's your weight cutting? Like, there's all those kinds of practical, big picture questions, regardless of your style. And ultimately, I mean, I stand by the stuff I've been saying in the series of videos I've been putting out over the last couple of weeks about like A games, meaning an athlete or fighter's A game versus B game or other games, and just kind of how that shit all works. So I'd say figuring that out for yourself and how that applies in MMA versus kickboxing is ultimately where you need to go. So like figuring out just kind of how you're trying to fight. Don't be like an aimless guy who's just like trying moves out when you're fighting, you know, who's just like, oh, well, I mean, we're kickboxing, so I guess I'm gonna try out these moves I like, and oh, we're wrestling, well, I guess I'm gonna try out. We're in the over-under clinch. I guess I better try out this over-under takedown that I've been learning. Oh, we're on the ground. I guess I better try this. I better try this. Like, you need to have more direction than that. You want to eventually get to a point where, yes, you know exactly what your win conditions are and how to get there. I think that's just important for everybody. So that's a thing I would say you're probably supposed to be figuring out right now. But beyond that, I mean, I can't tell you much. I only have one sentence of information here. RKO to nowhere again. How many full ROM chin-ups could you crank out? How much weight can you press overhead? My overhead press PR was 200. And I think my like chin-up PR is like 21 or something. I can't remember. I couldn't do that right now. Right now I could probably do like 17 or something. Let's see here. Miller Jimeth asks, if you could change the result of one fight in MMA history, what would it be? Ooh. Could be out of love for the loser, dislike for the winner, curiosity of how the timeline would change. Every Fedor lost. Let me think. This is gonna like undo all of the work I've been trying to do to say I'm not an Islam hater, but like the Volk fight with Islam. Like if Volk could have just, I don't know, gotten the finish in like round 5 of the first fight, and with that been the GOAT, because at that point he would have a strong argument, I think. Especially since like I've argued that if he beats Evloev, he'll have an argument to being the GOAT. You know, he'll have a case because he's got such a strong resume and he already proved himself against like an insane jiu-jitsu guy in Ortega. So if he can now beat like a smothering kind of Caucasus region type wrestler, which he nearly did in the first Islam fight, but couldn't quite. I've argued that if he beats Evloev, he'll probably not be the GOAT. Like I probably wouldn't put him number 1, but like he'd be in that upper tier now. He'd be in the mix with guys like Mighty Mouse and GSP and Fedor and Islam and Jones. Like he'd be in that mix. But I think if he had just beaten Islam, he would have a very strong case for that. And I love Volk. He's one of my favorite fighters. So I'll go with that one. Have you ever been in a street fight? Asks John YL 5BL. If so, what was the result? What happened? Maybe if you haven't been. Okay, so I'm not like a troublemaker who looks to get into fights, and I'm not like a huge nightlife guy. Not a drinker. But I've had a few altercations. So when I was a kid, I used to get into fights all the time. Kind of from like being a young kid up through elementary school, I got into fights. I wasn't like a bully picking fights with people, but I just got into scuffles. And I had done karate at the time, and karate allowed me to just like nuke kids on like when I got into fights with them, because my go-to would be I would just literally, anytime a fight would start, I would step back into a front stance. I would do a back leg front kick to the stomach, and 9 times out of 10 that just like ended the fight. And then if it didn't end the fight, I would immediately follow up with a reverse punch to the stomach, and that just always worked, because if you know how to actually hit and you're hitting someone who's not ready to be hit, you're hitting someone who's like a soft-bodied child and who's not in a stance and is like not used to getting hit and not used to bracing, like you just have such an advantage. At that point, it's just hit him first, basically, and you win. So that was like me throughout up to like 5th grade or something, and then I just didn't get into fights like throughout high school or up through high school. I had a moment, this is probably like right when I started doing MMA training. I was at a Slayer show, and I was in the mosh pit, And I don't think I did anything wrong in terms of like mosh pit etiquette, but I was doing my thing and some guy came up and he punched me right in the liver. And it was the first time I ever like got my body like shut down by a liver shot. You know, it had never happened to me before. And I immediately started seizing and I looked at the guy and he looked at me and he went, and then he ran off. He just ran into the crowd and I was like, fuck. So that happened. I've had like mild little things like I've pushed people at concerts for being assholes and stuff like that, but like they turn into fights or more elevated things. I had an altercation at a Perkins restaurant at like 1 a.m. because my buddy and I went there after watching the fights, and a wedding party showed up after us and they were drunk. And like literally all that happened was like the bride and groom and like their buddies like walked past us, and I kind of held up my mug and said Mazel Tov, and the groom said fuck you, and he kept walking and he sat down, and then he was like mumbling shit, and then I was saying shit to my buddy. I'm like, well, fuck this guy, you know. And so he got all mad, he got up, he came over to the booth, and I'm sitting there, and he pushed my face, so then I pushed him away, and I got up out of the booth, and he tried to put me in like a side headlock, and I immediately cleared the arm and just ran him down into the floor and like got on top of him. And I was holding him down, and I was purposely announcing to everyone for legal purposes and de-escalation purposes. I just started announcing very loudly, I'm just holding him, I'm not hitting him. And his buddy got up and my buddy got up, and my buddy also trained and was strong as shit and pushed that guy and, you know, basically was ready to go. But at that point, you know, there's other people in the restaurant, the waiter gets involved, and it was clear that they were drunk and causing the problems. And we had been, my buddy and I had already been there for a while and nothing had happened, and these guys had like just shown up. So they got kicked out, no cops were called, and that was it. I had an altercation at a wedding like a year or two ago, where this was more of a verbal altercation, but we're all at the wedding, we're sitting there, and it's the speeches. It's the best man and everyone is giving speeches. And the table next to us is like being loud and not shutting the fuck up. And everyone is giving them looks. Everyone's doing the thing. And at some point, I finally lean over and just say, hey, shut the fuck up. And then that, you know, and just kind of say that and then go back to listening. And then after the speeches, some kid who's like, seemed like he was like 19 or something, comes over from the table, and he's clearly kind of drunk. And he's mad at me. He's like, you shouldn't have said that. And blah, 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 blah. And so I'm sitting there and I lean back and I just put my finger in his face and I said, dude, you gotta get the fuck out of my face. And I just kept telling him that. At some point, like his dad came over and he's like, hey, he's just a kid. And I said, if he's just a kid, then you need to get him the fuck out of my face because he's going to get hurt. And so he got pulled away and he was like really mad. Like he wanted to fight. And like his dad and his brother are like pulling him away, and because I couldn't help it because he was being such a prick, he sat down and he's just staring at me like he's got daggers in his eyes, and so I like blew him a kiss, and he totally went off the rail, and yeah, they had to hold him down, and I think at some point, like someone explained to him that like kind of who I am and that he probably shouldn't like pick a fight with me. And he was like cool for the rest of the event, and I didn't talk to him or anything, but I saw him mingling and on the dance floor and stuff, and he wasn't like eyeballing me for the rest of the thing. So that happened. Man, I'm trying to think of like other example. I don't have a lot of like those kinds of stories. I kind of avoid trouble. I don't go out looking to get into fights with people. But I'm not too worried. We'll say that much. Moving on. RK out of nowhere. You're asking too many fucking questions, buddy. You get one more. Current you versus current Anderson Silva. Do you have a chance in your opinion? I mean, he is definitely better than I am. I mean, he's just, in terms of like martial arts knowledge and experience and all that shit, natural athleticism, he's way better. But he is old. I think he's like almost 50. So I could beat him. I'm not like guaranteeing that would happen, but yeah, I could beat him. Like if Jake Paul can beat him in a boxing match, I can beat him in a fight. Like, sure, yes. I think so. uh, there's just a good chance he like hurts himself. Right? There's just a good chance he and I are in like a clinch, and I start wrenching stuff, and like he hurts himself. Like the odds of that go up a lot, right? So that's like whenever I spar with like and grapple with older black belts, like I have to go gently because I just know that if I start really doing stuff, like shit's gonna start popping. That's just how it works. So yeah, one of my main guys. Sad Ali Khan 3031 says, congrats. Thanks very much, guys. So you're very complimentary here. I won't say everything he said just for the sake of not tooting my own horn, but yeah, he's very, very nice. Let's see, no question. Like George Gentiles 2300 asks, do you think JDM will win his next fight? Depends who it is against. I don't think he's got anything announced. I'm not like writing him off or anything. I never thought he was the best guy in the division, even when he was the champion. But like, but I don't think he's just like donezo. Maybe he will be. Like, you know, some people do fall off. Like I've seen careers like that. But like, I don't, you know, and we've seen some bad stuff in terms of like body language from him during fights. So maybe. Yeah, maybe he's wilting in some weird way, but like I'm not writing him off. There's certainly winnable fights for him in like the top 10. I mean, come on. So I don't know. We'd have to see like who his opponent is because if it's I don't know if it's Morales or if it's Shavkat or something, I might not be super confident. But if it's a rematch with Bilal, or if it's Kamaru Usman, or if it's Leon Edwards, or I mean, hell, even if it's like Sean Brady, I'm not convinced he can't beat Sean Brady. So yeah, I mean, like there's ways for him to still have success, I think. Moving on. Let's see. Fight Nugget MMA asks, if you would grant one unranked action fighter a title shot, who would it be? Do you think there's a consistent pattern to who wins between strikers, grapplers, and hybrids? Okay, he's got a few questions here. So you get the speed run answers here. One unranked action fighter gets a title run. So like, who's my favorite action fighter who never got a title run? James Thompson. Would never happen, but yes, James Thompson in the past, like somehow becoming a UFC champion. Yes, him. Do you think there's a consistent pattern to who wins between strikers, grapplers, and hybrids? Not really. I think each of those are very viable archetypes, and I've talked about this. You know, strikers, wrestlers, meaning like more control and takedown focused grapplers, striker wrestler hybrids, and like all rounders at the higher level. I don't think all rounders are actually a great archetype in general, but it seems like a lot of the very best guys are all rounders. So guys like Islam and Mighty Mouse and Jones and stuff. But yeah, I mean, those are all viable archetypes, and they're better than like a ground submission guy archetype. Of all the viable archetypes, that the sort of BJJ first approach is sort of at the bottom of the ladder, I think. But even that is still viable. It's at the bottom of the ladder of the viable archetypes, right? So I don't think there's any like one best way. Current favorite fighters outside of the UFC. Check out my boy Vladislav Kovalov. I've not heard of him. Let's see. I mean, Mamed Khalidov is like kind of retired. It would have been him. He is kind of retired. Let me think. I'm not sure. I don't know. A lot of my kind of favorite little regional guys have kind of snuck their way in, like my boy Tafik Musayev. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Let's see. Moving on. Let's see. Grayson Boundrew 8602 says, how should I start training MMA if I've never had any experience? Been lifting for about 5 years. Want to make the switch. Also, how should I balance weight training with MMA training? Former powerlifter, and I'm happy to know your views on strength training with MMA. Love the content. Good man. Thank you. Well, you should just go watch the video. I did a whole video, two separate videos, one called strength training for MMA and one called cardio for MMA. So I just recommend going and watching those. As far as how you should start training if you have no experience, you should just join an MMA gym, my man, and start doing the classes. It's pretty simple. As far as balancing lifting with MMA training, like, yeah, you can't do like a full-blown like powerlifting program and be like in a fight camp or something. Yeah, I mean, like, people have talked about that. Like Mike Israetel has done videos about balancing weight training with like jujitsu as a hobbyist, and he's kind of done it from like, what if you're a hobbyist who cares more about lifting? What if you're a hobbyist who cares more about the jiu-jitsu? What if you're an actual like elite jiu-jitsu competitor? Like, how do you balance lifting? And he's talking about it more from a bodybuilding perspective than a powerlifting one, but that's still like a general like kind of good way to look at it. If you read Practical Programming for Strength Training by Mark Ripito, he goes into pretty exhaustive detail about how to do that, how to balance lifting for athletes. Yeah, so I'm not going to give you like a program here, but yeah, you're not going to be able to do like a full blown, like full time, all I do is powerlifting, I'm J.M. Blakely, type thing. You're going to have to mitigate it. Thankfully, if you have a powerlifting background and you've been lifting for 5 years, you're just going to be stronger than almost everyone you fucking train with or fight. So honestly, like just maintaining is kind of all you're going to need probably. And maintaining can be maintaining 90% of what you have now. You know what I mean? So that's that. Let's see. Adriana5979 asks, what's my favorite flavor? And then I asked for what kind of item, to which they did not answer. You dropped the ball, buddy. All right, moving on. Let's see. My boy Padiloquend0 again asks, does Conor McGregor deserve to be on the GOAT list based purely on his star power and the fact that he brought a lot of new fans to the sport? Like maybe his career wasn't the best, but the impact he had on the UFC was such that he deserves a spot in the GOAT list. I mean, if that's how you do the GOAT list, then yes. Like if the GOAT list is also about kind of broader cultural greatness and about like who's a great star, and it's a little bit more like a Hall of Fame than like a GOAT list, then sure. Yeah, Conor would be one. It'd be like Conor and Hoyce and Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar and like Chuck Liddell and like Ilya Topuria is kind of getting in there. Sakuraba in Japan might be like that. Yeah, I mean, so like you'd have some people like that in there, but that's not how I do the GOAT list. So no, Conor only gets evaluated like everyone else based on like how great his in-cage achievements are. Let's see. Tyree Strikes requests I go live. That will be happening soon. Let's see. Yours If Kill asks, worst take you've heard about anything MMA and best? Really hard to say. I mean, worst take just comes from people who don't know what they're talking about. It just comes from like new fans, right? It comes from like some casual who's only just discovered the sport and just doesn't know what they don't know, and they'll say all kinds of stuff that's insane. So it's not that, at a certain level, it kind of it's categorically the same. It's just all profoundly wrong. Best take I've ever heard, like, I don't know, my videos have the best takes. Now, maybe a better way to think of it is like, whom do I think like routinely gives the best takes? Even that, I don't know, because like there's like someone like Jack Slack, for example, is like, as far as having encyclopedic knowledge of like martial arts, and just being like a good martial arts analyst is like the king. He's the gold standard, but he has some bad takes. Like he thinks I've talked about this, but like he was saying that Stipe is like higher on the heavyweight GOAT list than Fedor, and that like Pantoja is like possibly better than Mighty Mouse and stuff like that. And I was like, are you fucking crazy, dude? Like these are some casual ass like Lucas Tracy type takes, Jack. Like what's happening here? Like Luke Thomas has a lot of good takes, and I'm not even saying anything to do with his politics or anything, but just as a guy who covers the sport, he's like quite good. Kyle Mack, of the Fight Chronicles, that podcast. He has good takes. Check him out. Let's see, moving on. Nitrox1613 asks, do you consider lighter man skill and overall deeper weight classes when ranking, when making a GOAT list? How would you compare heavyweight champ with 5 title defenses to a lightweight champ with 1 title defense? How do you value the lighter division skill versus title wins? So, this is tricky. On the one hand, like, yes, lighter people are more skilled to a point. Because if you're a heavier person, like, it's just harder to do shit. Like, even just a basic thing, like, throw a rear leg head kick, like one move in a vacuum. If you're like 6'4" and 270 pounds, like, that's way more weight you're moving around and balancing on one foot. And I mean, like, everything about it's just harder. And if there's more like agility type stuff involved, where you've got to change directions on the fly, that's a lot more mass to move and stop and move and stop and move. Like, that's just way harder. If you've ever done like actual agility work, even just outside of like MMA, like if you've ever done like Michael Yes's style agility runs, where it's all about that cut and like running at full speed and ideally in one step, like changing directions 90 degrees. That's very hard, right? And the bigger you are, the harder that is, because it's more mass to stop and sling off into this other direction. So there's that. Heavyweights also just can't train as much. Like, they'll get tired. Like, if a heavyweight spends an hour working the heavy bag, he's gonna, he either won't do the hour, or he'll throw far less overall punches than will like a flyweight, right? And that means the flyweight, workout to workout, is getting more reps in. And also, heavyweights are just more likely to get hurt doing shit. Like, heavyweights doing like scrambling, no-gi grappling and wrestling and stuff are more likely to hurt themselves. So they can't do it as much, and they can't use it as much for their cardio. Like, Cormier's talked about that. Like, you got to rely on the Aerodyne bike and stuff like that more for your cardio as a heavyweight, just so you don't get hurt. So all of that, yes, leads to them being less skilled. But the turnaround is that that's like unavoidable. So it's like, well, yeah, we're less skilled, but we're also bigger and would beat you. So, like, should it actually count against us? You can, though, count the fact that just the talent pool is smaller. So, like, the lightweight division just has way more people competing in it than the heavyweight division does. So it means more. It's like being the smartest kid in your class in a school of 500 versus a school of 5,000. You know what I mean? So, in that sense, it counts for more. As far as like a 1-to-1, there's no like easy answer. Like, yeah, does a heavyweight with 5 defenses count for more than a lightweight with 1? I mean, to that, I would say the heavyweight counts for more. And that's illustrated by the fact that heavyweight title defenses are actually relatively small in number, partly because it's such like a volatile division. But in general, how you adjudicate that, like, there's not an easy answer. Like, if all things are equal, I will give favor to the guy competing in the division that's like deeper in terms of talent pool. As far as actually saying like lighter man skill should count for much in the GOAT list, like, I'm not sure I agree. Even like the idea of pound for pound, the idea of like, well, if they were the same size, who would win? It's like, well, but if they were the same size, the heavy guy would be better and the smaller guy would be worse. So what does it even mean to ask that, right? And if they fought right now, the heavy guy would win. So in a certain sense, I kind of just have favoritism actually for like the heavyweights, and favoritism for that idea that you're like the baddest man on the planet. And for that reason, even when the heavyweight division sucks, I still care about the title picture, because yeah, that is the guy who's going to beat up everyone else in the world, barring maybe someone at light heavyweight. You know what I mean? And that's also why I did that video talking about just dissolving the light heavyweight division and absorbing it into the heavyweight division and just making a good division out of it. So for that reason, I care. Hopefully that answers that question. Hold on. All right, moving on. Let's see. FJOI3WAFNO asks, how much do I bench? I think my PR was 320. I can't do that right now. I'm coming back from an injury, and I'm doing more high rep stuff. I said yesterday how my last bench workout, I did a set of 30 with 185, so I still feel pretty strong, but I'm not at my best. Let's see here. Mystical Ninja 420 asks, when and how and why did you start your martial arts journey? Was it the power fantasy, self-mastery, or were you just bored? I started when I was a kid, when I was like 4 or 5. My dad is a lifelong martial artist, and my dad got me into like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies from a very young age. And I just dug martial arts, and I liked martial arts themed like kid shit, like the Ninja Turtles and the Power Rangers and stuff like that. And yeah, I started doing karate and kung fu right away and loved it. And, you know, liked it both as a means of like being able to fight people and beat people up, and also just as an art and as like a thing that was cool and appealing in that way. So that's how I got into it. Let's see. Logan 2619 says, "Hey brother, love the channel." Oh, thank you. I'm 23 years old with zero experience in any form of martial arts. What martial art would you recommend to someone like me to start out with? And let's see, there's a comment section here. Let's see, I said just for fun or to compete in MMA, to which he said, honestly, I mean just for fun at first. I'd be curious to hear your answer on the latter as well. Let's see, I remember hearing that Cyril Gane had 0 fights and martial arts training until he was like 24, 25. So it depends. As far as being a fighter, Cyril Gane is a heavyweight, so it's easier to start late. Cyril Gane is also a fucking like freak athlete, so are you a heavyweight and are you a freak athlete would be questions I would ask. 23 to just start from scratch is pretty late if you want to be like a UFC champion and you're not, again, a heavyweight freak athlete. Never say never, but it also sounds like you're not hell-bent on doing that, which is also a sign that that's like just not going to happen. That doesn't mean you can't have some fights or anything. I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to be like a career fighter, a UFC fighter, a world champion, probably not, frankly. As far as what to start with, whatever you like. If you like striking, if you like jiu-jitsu, if you want to do everything, then yeah, just like join an MMA gym and do everything. Jiu-jitsu doesn't involve getting punched in the face, so that's nice. That's also a good way to kind of ease into it, right? So if you can only pick one thing, I would recommend jiu-jitsu. Let's see here. Odin1936 says, why are you not against the usage of steroids? When if they confer an unfair advantage to use their body against somebody? When if they convey an unfair advantage to the user against somebody who doesn't lift or who doesn't use them in a fight? So I'm not going to rehash this. I've done like a bunch of videos about this. Just go watch. I did a video that's literally called "Steroids would make or PEDs would make MMA more fair, not less." So just go watch that and the adjacent videos. Because there's like an hour and a half worth of me like talking about this. Let's see. Dixie Normus 6742 asks, is 19 too old to become a fighter with no prior experience? No. Absolutely not. Most people don't have much more than that. Let's see. One last one here. And again, for my Padaloke Quendo Zero guy asks, as a hardcore fan, what did you think of the CM Punk UFC saga at the time? So I actually saw his fight with Jackson live in Chicago because it was on that UFC 225 card with Whitaker and Romero. I was intrigued. I mean, I wasn't like a fan of Punk. I hadn't really heard of him. I don't follow like the pro wrestling thing, even though pro wrestling can be really fun, but I just don't follow it. So I didn't have any interest on that front. When I learned that he had no real like athletic background or combat sports background beyond pro wrestling, I was like, well, okay, he's not going to do that well. But as just like a guy chasing a bucket list dream, I thought it was kind of fun. And he looked about as good as you'd expect. Like that's what guys look like. Like someone teased me in my MMA Shay video where I showed I showed footage from my fights, and I talked about how my skills were very underdeveloped at that point, and I had good grappling, and that was kind of it. And someone saw the opening of one of my fights where I just chased down the guy, like pumping really sloppy punches, and he says he compared it to CM Punk in his first fight. And I was like, yeah, I mean, me and CM Punk had like the same experience and same training at that point. Like that's what that looks like, buddy. So I don't know, like it was amusing. Wasn't that cool or anything. I didn't care that much, but I wasn't like a hater. I wasn't like really pissed off about it, and I wasn't. I didn't mock the guy for fighting the way he did. That's just what people look like when they've had like 2 years of training and start cage fighting. That's just like like that. That's what you should expect. A good way to appreciate like the UFC is to just go watch local fights, and both because they're fun, but also because they'll show you like, oh, this is what like more normal people look like when they fight. Holy shit, the guys in the UFC are just like amazing fighters and athletes, and we're overly critical of them sometimes. So that's what I'd say about that. That's all the questions, guys. Thanks again. Thanks for 3,000 subs. The channel just keeps growing. This will probably be a thing we do going forward. With any luck, we'll be up to 4,000 within another month here. So it'll just keep going. And hopefully that answered all your questions to your satisfaction. And yeah, love you guys. Take care. Check out my other channel again, Michael Walsh Nerd Stuff, my nerd channel. If you want to hear me possibly talk about anime like I was prompted to, go check that out. I'll link it down in the description box. But take care, guys.